All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Looks like we've got a really fascinating topic on deck for today, a whole bunch of material on risk strategy.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So let's, our goal here is to sort of break it all down, distill it, not just what risk strategy is, but why it matters so much, especially in today's world. I mean, things are changing so fast.
Exactly. It's not just a trendy term or a box to tick.
Mm.
It's more about, think of it as that fundamental plan that ties together how an organization handles all those potential challenges.
Mm.
The ones that could really throw them off course from their long-term goals. It's all about building that inherent strength to not just survive tough times, but to actually come out stronger.
I like that, the ability to not just weather the storm, but to thrive in it.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into that plan idea, right? Because sometimes strategy and risk together can sound a bit abstract.
Yeah, a little high level for sure.
One thing that I found really helpful in the material was the distinction between risk strategy and risk tactics. It explains that risk strategy is kind of like setting those big picture principles, the why and the what, behind how a company deals with operational risks.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's that overarching philosophy. And then risk tactics are the concrete actions, the how, that bring that philosophy to life. It could be anything from putting in new cybersecurity measures, or actually running those in-depth scenarios like, what if the market suddenly shifts? So strategy could be something like, we're going to protect our essential operations no matter what. And tactics are the actual steps to make that happen.
Okay, yeah, that makes the connection much clearer. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the essential elements of risk strategy. How to build a solid one, how it ties into the core of a business, their model, their daily processes, and of course, how it plays a vital role in things like compliance and reputation.
Sounds good to me.
Ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, establishing an effective risk strategy. Now, this isn't something you just, whip up overnight, right?
Right, it takes time.
It starts with really understanding where the organization wants to go, what are their goals, their aspirations, that sort of thing.
Exactly. You need to really know what you're working with, what the organization wants to achieve. And that's where two crucial concepts come into play: risk appetite and risk tolerance. They're kind of the foundation of everything.
Yeah, the material emphasizes those two quite a bit. I was hoping you could, unpack those a little.
Sure. Think of risk appetite as the overall level of risk an organization is willing to accept, to reach those objectives we talked about, like a high-level compass for big strategic decisions. Risk tolerance, on the other hand, is more about the nitty-gritty details. It sets those acceptable limits for how much variation you're okay with around those specific objectives. It's kind of like, let's say your company wants to expand into a new market, right? Your risk appetite might be, yeah, we're comfortable with moderate expansion. But then your risk tolerance might be, we're absolutely not okay with losing more than, say, 5% of our investment in the process. You see the difference?
Yeah, I see that. So appetite is like the big picture, the willingness, and tolerance is where you draw the line, the actual boundaries.
Right. And often, companies don't really figure out their true risk appetite until they're faced with a tough choice. That gap between what they say they're willing to risk and what their actions actually show, that's a really important area for reflection, for making the strategy better.
That's a good point. It's one thing to say you're a risk taker, but when faced with a real decision.
Exactly.
So what comes next in actually building this strategy?
Well, the next big thing is a really thorough, honest assessment of what the risk landscape looks like right now. And this has to be a 360-degree view. You have to look inward at your processes, resources, even the culture within the organization, and then outward at everything that's going on around you. Market changes, tech disruptions, the regulatory landscape, all of it.
So it's almost like a health check of full body scan for the organization, right? Identifying the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Exactly. You need to know your strengths and weaknesses and where the opportunities and threats lie, both inside and outside the company.
Now, the material also talks about the need for a clear governance framework. What does that look like in the context of risk strategy?
Well, governance is all about providing structure and accountability. So risk management isn't just an idea. It's actually put into practice. It's about clearly defining who's responsible for what at every level of the organization, from the board of directors all the way down to individual teams. This way, risk management isn't just one department's job. It's woven into how decisions are made everywhere.
It's everyone's responsibility, in a way.
That's the ideal.
And it's not just about formal structures and who reports to whom, right? The material talks about the importance of building a risk-aware culture.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. It doesn't matter how perfect your risk strategy is on paper if people in the organization don't understand it, embrace it, and actually participate in it. That means ongoing training, clear communication about the risks and the strategy, and most importantly, leadership walking the walk, showing that they take it seriously.
Leading by example.
Exactly. When you have employees at every level who are tuned in to potential risks and feel empowered to address them, that's when you know you have a truly strong risk culture.
So it's about making risk management part of the DNA of the organization.
Exactly.
Now, how do you know if all this effort is actually paying off? How do you measure the effectiveness of your risk strategy?
Right. You need to be able to track your progress and see if you're actually achieving what you set out to do. That's where setting clear objectives and metrics comes in. You have to define what success looks like in tangible terms for your risk management efforts, and then put systems in place to measure your progress against those targets. But it's important to remember that these measurement processes shouldn't exist in isolation. They need to be integrated with your overall strategic planning and your day-to-day operations.
So it's all connected, the big picture and the daily grind.
Exactly. Everything should be working together towards the same goals.
Makes sense. You need to be able to see how risk management is actually contributing to the organization's success. And one last point on this. The material stresses that a risk strategy isn't a static document, something you write once and then forget about.
Absolutely not. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. The risks you face are constantly changing, just like your strategic objectives and the environment you operate in. That means constant monitoring and regular review of the risk strategy are crucial. You have to adapt and evolve along with everything else.
It's a living document, constantly evolving.
Right. You need to be able to adjust as you go because the landscape is always shifting.
Okay, so we've talked about the foundations of a solid risk strategy. Let's move on to how this connects with the heart of the organization, its business model.
All right, let's do that.
The material emphasizes the importance of considering both short-term business objectives and those long-term strategic objectives.
Yeah. And understanding how they work together is key. Business objectives are often about the here and now, the annual budget, expected income, and anticipated costs. These are closely tied to your business model, which, as the material describes, is basically how your organization creates and delivers value.
Right. So, for example, if you have a membership organization, their immediate objective might be things like member renewals or getting enough sponsorships to hit their budget. And their business model is built on offering those services and benefits in exchange for membership fees and sponsor money.
Exactly. And the immediate risks to their business objectives would be anything that could mess with those income streams or stop them from delivering those services they promised.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So at this level, risk management is all about keeping that current business model stable and efficient, making sure those short-term financial goals are met.
Precisely. You want to protect what's working right now.
Now, the material also brings up this idea of a business delivery model. How is that different from the regular business model, and where does risk strategy come into play there?
So the business delivery model goes a bit deeper into the nuts and bolts of how an organization actually puts its business model into action. It maps out the whole value chain, how value is created, delivered to the customer, and how the organization gets value back in return. It's not just what you're offering, but how the processes, channels, resources you use to get it to your customers effectively and efficiently. This detailed model is really helpful for understanding different business types and, importantly, for identifying potential bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and those opportunities for growth and improvement, which you'd address through a well-defined business development plan.
So the current business model is like a snapshot of how we do things now, and the business development plan, based on that delivery model, is the roadmap for where we want to go in the future.
You got it. The current model reflects how things are running now, but to achieve those long-term goals, you need to actively evolve that model through smart business development.
And to make sure risk management is part of that evolution, the material introduces a simple model for business development: strategy, tactics, operations, reporting. How does risk management fit into each of these stages?
Well, starting with strategy is all about managing opportunities. You're identifying potential paths for growth and innovation, but at the same time, you're assessing the risks that come with each path. Tactics, which are often specific projects designed to implement the strategy, are about managing uncertainties and control risks. You want to make sure the actions you take are not only effective in achieving the goals, but also don't create new problems along the way.
So you don't want to solve one problem by creating another.
Exactly. And then the operations stage, that's where hazard risks come into focus, the everyday stuff that can disrupt normal functioning. And underpinning everything, we have compliance. It's not a separate silo, but a continuous process supporting everything else, ensuring integrity and sustainability.
Okay, so risk management really is woven into the fabric of the business model and how it evolves. Now, let's turn to how risk management integrates with an organization's day-to-day business processes. The material makes it clear that for risk management to truly work, the big picture objectives need to be tightly aligned with those fundamental processes.
Definitely. Risk management can't just be a theoretical exercise. It needs to be embedded in the way the organization does business, how it makes money, manages expenses, interacts with customers, and ultimately fulfills its mission. These core processes, as the material defines them, are the essential activities that are crucial for the organization to achieve its goals and meet the needs of its stakeholders.
And it breaks down these core processes into 4 categories: developing and executing strategy, managing tactics and projects, overseeing daily operations, and ensuring compliance.
Exactly. And within each of these categories, there are tons of individual activities. The challenge is to find the sweet spot between effectiveness, doing the right things to achieve strategic goals, and efficiency, doing them in a way that minimizes waste and maximizes output.
Right, so not just doing things right, but doing the right things.
Exactly. You need to be both effective and efficient.
Now, the material also talks about potential weaknesses in these core processes, things like leadership gaps, competition gaps, efficiency gaps, and compliance gaps. Can you quickly explain what each of those means?
Sure. A leadership gap usually means there's a problem with setting a clear strategic direction or communicating it effectively. This can lead to missed opportunities or even losing your edge against the competition. A competition gap happens when you're not managing your tactical initiatives well, not making the necessary improvements to keep up with your rivals in terms of innovation, market share, and so on.
So you're falling behind.
Exactly. Then you have the efficiency gap, which means your daily operations are not running smoothly. This can lead to wasted resources, higher costs, and problems with delivering your products or services. And finally, the compliance gap. This one's about weaknesses in following all the rules, legal, regulatory, ethical. This can be a big problem, exposing you to fines, reputational damage, even the risk of losing your license to operate.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but that's where risk management comes in. By identifying and addressing these potential gaps, you can make your core processes stronger, more resilient, and more aligned with your strategic goals.
So risk management isn't just about avoiding negative things, it's also about strengthening the foundations of the organization.
Exactly. It's a proactive approach to building a more robust and successful organization.
Okay, let's move on to the interplay between strategy and tactics and how risk management supports both. The material reiterates that the business strategy defines the what and the how of what the organization wants to achieve.
Right, and risk management is a crucial partner in making sure those strategic decisions are not only effective, but also efficient. It ensures you're using your resources wisely to achieve your goals.
And the main tool here is risk assessment. It's about looking at the risks associated with both your current strategy and any new strategic options you're considering.
Exactly. Especially in today's world, where things are changing so rapidly, those strategic choices can be really significant and often involve a lot of risk.
Right, you have to be adaptable and prepared for anything.
Definitely. And risk assessment in this context needs to be really thorough. You have to consider things like stakeholder expectations, customer needs, the skills of your workforce, and of course, the good old SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
So it's about looking at the big picture, both inside and outside the organization.
Exactly. You need to know what you're good at, where you need to improve, and what's happening in the world around you that could affect your strategy.
And based on this assessment, organizations might consider different strategic moves like partnerships, outsourcing, subcontracting, or investing in new technologies. But as the material points out, each of these options comes with its own set of risks that have to be carefully considered before any decisions are made.
Absolutely.
Mm.
You don't want to jump into something without fully understanding the potential downsides. And the risk assessment should also look for potential disruptors, things that could completely derail your strategy. This could be anything from a major economic downturn to a new technology that makes your product obsolete.
So you're not just looking at the risks of what you're doing, but also the risks of things that could happen to you.
Precisely. It's about being proactive and anticipating potential problems before they arise.
And the material also highlights that strategic objectives often include things like achieving significant growth or enhancing the organization's reputation. These are positive goals, but they also come with their own set of risks.
Definitely. Growth can bring complexity and new challenges, and reputation is a valuable asset that can be easily damaged. Both of these need careful consideration and management.
Okay, so moving from strategy to the more tactical level, we're talking about the specific actions taken to put that strategy into practice. And here again, risk management plays a key role in ensuring successful execution.
Absolutely. Tactics need to be chosen carefully, implemented meticulously, and managed diligently. This ensures that your operations are efficient, your financial reporting is accurate, and you're meeting all your compliance obligations.
So it's about making sure everything runs smoothly and according to plan.
Exactly. You want to minimize surprises and maximize the chances of achieving your goals.
And often, projects are used to drive changes to those core business processes we talked about earlier. Risk management in a project context focuses on preventing delays, staying within budget, and making sure the project meets its specifications. But the material emphasizes that project success shouldn't just be measured by those traditional metrics.
Right, it's not just about delivering on time and within budget. A project might hit all those targets, but if it doesn't lead to real improvements in those core processes it was supposed to improve, then it hasn't really achieved its strategic purpose. Risk management supports tactics and projects through ongoing risk assessments, developing risk response strategies, and conducting post-implementation reviews to make sure the controls are working.
So, in the end, effective tactics lead to the right processes, and well-managed projects make those processes better, which ultimately helps you achieve your strategic goals. And this whole dynamic interplay might even require revisiting and adjusting your business model and objectives along the way. The material gives us two concrete examples to illustrate this: a strategy statement and a tactic statement.
Yes, the strategy statement focuses on building a comprehensive enterprise risk management framework. This framework aims to make the organization more resilient, ensure strong compliance, and protect its reputation, all while supporting sustainable growth. Then, the tactic statement outlines the specific actions for implementing this strategy, like using standardized risk assessment tools and improving incident response protocols, especially in areas like health, safety, and environmental hazards.
Okay, so we've seen how strategy and tactics are deeply connected to risk management. Now let's shift to ensuring effective and efficient operations also through a risk management lens. The material states that the main goal here is to keep those business processes running smoothly and without disruptions.
Exactly. When it comes to operations, risk management is often about identifying and mitigating those everyday hazards that can disrupt your normal workflow. Well-designed processes that minimize these disruptions can give you a real competitive advantage and make your operations more cost-effective.
And what are some of the key risk management activities that apply to this operational context?
It's a whole range of things, really. You have to systematically identify potential operational risks, assess their likelihood and impact, develop response strategies, allocate resources for controls, create plans for responding to disruptions, report on your efforts, and continuously monitor and review your controls to make sure they're still effective. Internal audit also plays a crucial role in evaluating how well those controls are working and ensuring compliance.
So it's a continuous process of identifying, assessing, responding to, and monitoring risks.
Exactly. It's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing effort to make your operations as smooth and efficient as possible.
The material makes a good point about the difference between effectiveness and efficiency in operations, using examples like choosing a car versus a train or a taxi versus the metro. Can you explain how risk management helps achieve both?
Sure. Efficiency is about using your resources wisely, finding the cheapest or fastest way to do something. But effectiveness is about choosing the right approach in the first place. Sometimes the most efficient option isn't the most effective. For example, driving your car might be the most efficient way to get somewhere in terms of fuel consumption, but taking the train might be faster and cheaper overall, making it more effective.
So sometimes you have to look beyond the immediate costs and consider the bigger picture.
Exactly. Risk management helps you do that by considering both the short-term and long-term implications of your choices. It helps you make sure you're not just doing things right, but you're also doing the right things.
And as we discussed before, your business model reflects how you currently operate, and your strategy and tactics are all about improving that model, making it both more effective and more efficient.
Exactly. It's a continuous process of improvement.
Okay, let's move on to another crucial area: ensuring compliance through risk management. The material introduces the MAY-D framework to explain the main purposes of risk management.
Right. MAD stands for Mandatory Requirements, Assurance, Decision-Making, and Effective and Efficient Core Processes. These are the four main reasons why organizations engage in risk management. And this framework connects to the STOC framework, which categorizes core processes as strategic, tactical, operational, and compliance. By fulfilling the MAD purposes, you directly support and enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of these STOC processes.
So it's all connected. The reasons you do risk management tie directly to the core processes of the organization.
Exactly. It's about making sure everything works together smoothly and effectively.
And when we focus on the mandatory requirements part of MAID, we're talking about obligations that come from stakeholders like regulators, customers, and financial institutions.
Exactly. These aren't optional things. You have to meet these requirements to stay in business. And you do that by setting up robust and efficient compliance processes. Failing to comply can have serious consequences like fines, lawsuits, and even losing your license to operate.
So compliance isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for survival.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental part of doing business responsibly and sustainably.
And risk management isn't just about checking boxes for compliance. It can actually help you turn compliance into a competitive advantage.
Definitely. If you design your compliance processes to be not just effective, but also efficient, you can minimize costs and streamline your operations. A truly risk-aware organization sees compliance as an opportunity to improve, not just a burden. For example, complying with health and safety regulations can actually lead to a safer and more productive workplace, which can save you money in the long run.
So it's about going beyond just meeting the minimum requirements and seeing compliance as a way to improve your organization.
Exactly. It's about turning a potential negative into a positive.
Okay, let's talk about reporting performance now. The material explains that operational reports are a key way to track how well the organization is executing its strategy.
Right. These reports give management the data they need to see if things are on track and make adjustments as needed. They're also the basis for providing updates to stakeholders, both internal and external.
And there are a few things organizations need to think about when it comes to these reports, right? Like what information to share, how detailed to make it, and what format to use. And of course, ensuring the accuracy of the information, which is where the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, comes in.
Definitely. SOX is a big deal in the U.S., particularly for publicly traded companies. It puts a lot of emphasis on the accuracy of financial reporting. Risk management supports this by assessing the risks in the reporting lines and data handling processes. And under SOX, external auditors have to verify not just the accuracy of the reports themselves, but also the effectiveness of the controls used to create them.
So it's not just about what you report, but also how you ensure that what you report is actually accurate and reliable.
Exactly. It's about transparency and accountability.
Now, let's dive into understanding the business model itself from a risk perspective. The material makes the point that every organization has a business model, whether they're a big corporation, a small nonprofit, or even a government agency.
Absolutely. It's the framework for how you deliver value and achieve your mission, regardless of what that mission might be. The material uses the acronym CORR to break down the key components of a business model: customer, offering, resources, and resilience.
Can you quickly explain what each of those means?
Sure. Customer refers to the people or organizations you're trying to serve. Offering is what you're providing to them, the products, services, or benefits. Resources are everything you use to create and deliver your offering, like your infrastructure, money, intellectual property, people, data, and partnerships. And resilience is your ability to withstand disruptions, adapt to change, and keep operating.
So the business model shows how everything works together to create and deliver that customer experience. And the material suggests analyzing this model using a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yeah, that's a great way to identify potential problems and areas for improvement. By looking at the business model through a risk lens, you can spot vulnerabilities in things like your supply chain or your ethical practices.
And these insights can then inform your strategy and the specific tactics you choose to implement.
Precisely. It helps you make more informed decisions about how to move forward.
It sounds like a well-defined business model is more than just a plan for how to make money. It's also a roadmap for managing risk and ensuring long-term sustainability.
Definitely. It's a holistic view of how the organization operates and creates value, and how it can do so in a way that's both successful and sustainable.
Especially in today's complex world with global supply chains and outsourced services, understanding and managing those interdependencies and potential risks is crucial. And the material also points to the increasing importance of corporate social responsibility throughout the value chain.
Absolutely. In today's world where information spreads so quickly, any unethical or unsustainable practices within your supply chain can quickly damage your reputation. Consumers are more aware than ever of where their products come from and how they're made, and they're demanding more transparency and accountability from companies.
So it's not just about managing your own operations, but also understanding and managing the risks associated with your suppliers and partners.
Exactly. It's about taking a holistic view of your impact on the world and taking responsibility for the actions of everyone involved in your business.
Okay, let's move on to a more focused discussion of risk management in relation to the business model. The material reiterates that every aspect of the business model can be analyzed for potential risks.
Right. While the offering itself is often the focus, it's important to start by understanding your target customer. There are risks associated with identifying and reaching them, keeping them loyal, providing good customer service, and making sure you have efficient distribution channels.
So you have to consider all stages of the customer journey, from initial awareness to long-term loyalty.
Exactly. You can't just focus on getting new customers. You also have to keep your existing ones happy.
And then there's the creation and delivery of the offering itself, which depends heavily on your resources and capabilities. Analyzing how those are structured and managed can reveal potential risks that could impact your ability to deliver on your promises.
Definitely. You need to make sure you have the right resources and the right skills to deliver your offering effectively and efficiently. And then there's resilience, which is about your ability to withstand disruptions and bounce back from challenges. This is often linked to your reputation, which is a valuable asset that can be easily damaged, but takes time and effort to build.
So it's about being prepared for the unexpected and having the ability to adapt and overcome challenges.
Exactly. And resilience also includes sustainability, both financial and environmental. These factors need to be considered in your risk assessment, focusing on operational hazards and compliance risks.
So, to build a sustainable and successful business model, you have to manage operational risks effectively and minimize your exposure to compliance failures.
Absolutely. It's about creating a solid foundation for long-term success.
And after assessing your current business model, you need to determine if it's truly sustainable. If not, developing a new model becomes your strategy, which you then implement through tactics and projects. The material talks about EM3 as a comprehensive approach to managing all these different types of risks: strategic, tactical, operational, and compliance.
Right. EM3 is about taking a holistic view of risk and integrating it into every aspect of the organization. It's about recognizing that all these different types of risks are interconnected and need to be managed in a coordinated way.
So it's not just about managing individual risks in isolation, but managing them as a whole, understanding how they interact and influence each other.
Exactly. It's about taking a strategic approach to risk management rather than just a tactical one.
And ultimately, a strong business model is about attracting new customers and building stronger relationships with existing ones.
Definitely. It's about creating a virtuous cycle where customer success leads to organizational success and vice versa.
Okay, let's shift to the role of reputation and corporate governance in shaping risk strategy. The material defines corporate social responsibility, CSR, as a key part of good corporate governance applicable to all organizations.
Right. CSR is about being a responsible member of society and taking care of the environment. It's not just about doing good. It also has real business benefits. A strong CSR program can protect your reputation, attract talent, help you manage risks, increase efficiency, improve your relationships with stakeholders, and even open up new opportunities.
So it's about doing the right thing, but it's also good for business.
Exactly. It's about aligning your business goals with the needs of society and the environment.
And CSR is a broad concept, covering things like social and environmental impact, local economic development, human rights, fair trade, and anti-corruption efforts.
It's really about making sure your business has a positive impact on the world, not a negative one.
And it's not just for big corporations, it's relevant for organizations of all sizes.
Definitely. Every organization has a responsibility to consider its impact on society and the environment.
Now, let's explore the connection between CSR and risk management. The material highlights the wide range of issues covered by CSR, from employee well-being and customer satisfaction to environmental sustainability and responsible sourcing practices.
And many of these CSR issues can be viewed through a risk management lens. For example, failing to ensure safe working conditions for your employees is not just an ethical issue, it's also a major risk that could lead to accidents, lawsuits, and reputational damage.
So managing CSR well can actually help you mitigate a wide range of risks.
Exactly. And it can also help you identify and seize opportunities. For example, investing in sustainable practices can not only reduce your environmental impact, but also save you money in the long run and attract environmentally conscious customers.
So it's not just about avoiding negative consequences, it's also about finding ways to do better and create positive change.
Absolutely. It's about turning CSR into a source of competitive advantage.
And the material points out that while addressing CSR topics as risks is a good starting point, it doesn't capture the full scope of the CSR agenda.
Right. There's more to CSR than just risk management. It's about actively seeking ways to make a positive impact on the world, even if it's not directly related to your business operations.
So it's about going beyond just minimizing harm and actively seeking ways to do good.
Exactly. It's about being a responsible and ethical organization, not just a profitable one.
Okay, let's focus on two specific areas that are crucial for both CSR and risk management: responsible supply chain management and ethical trading practices.
Definitely. These are huge issues in today's globalized world. Failing to ensure ethical behavior throughout your supply chain can have disastrous consequences for your reputation and your bottom line. Consumers are increasingly demanding transparency and accountability from companies, and they're willing to punish those who don't live up to their expectations.
And the material highlights the risks associated with unethical sourcing practices like worker exploitation, environmental damage, and corruption.
Right. These are real issues that companies need to address, not just to protect their reputation, but also to ensure their long-term sustainability.
And the material gives a good example of a clothing retailer that's taking a proactive approach to ethical sourcing. They've set clear requirements for their suppliers, covering things like labor practices, working conditions, wages, and subcontracting. And they're transparently communicating their commitment to ethical sourcing to their customers.
That's a great example of how a company can turn CSR into a competitive advantage. By being proactive and transparent about their ethical practices, they're building trust with their customers and differentiating themselves from their competitors.
And it's not just about setting standards and hoping for the best. They're also conducting audits to make sure their suppliers are complying with those standards.
Exactly. You have to follow through and make sure your words are backed up by actions.
And the material also highlights how positive CSR efforts can benefit companies, even in industries that traditionally have a negative public image. The example given is a fast food chain that's improving the nutritional value of its food and sourcing its ingredients more sustainably.
That's a great example of how a company can use CSR to address its critics and improve its reputation. It's about recognizing that you have a responsibility to society and the environment, and that taking those responsibilities seriously can actually be good for business.
And it's becoming increasingly common for companies to include detailed information about their CSR efforts in their annual reports. This demonstrates their commitment to transparency and accountability.
Definitely. It's no longer enough to just say you're doing good things. You have to be able to prove it.
Okay, let's turn our attention to reputation as a key aspect of risk strategy. The material states that reputation is often an organization's most valuable asset.
Absolutely. A good reputation can take years to build, but can be destroyed overnight. It's a precious asset that needs to be carefully managed and protected.
And it introduces the CASE framework for understanding the main elements of a good reputation: capabilities, activities, standards, and ethics. Can you quickly explain each of those?
Sure. Capabilities refer to your organization's core competencies and resources. Activities are the things you do, your business processes. Standards are the quality of your products or services and your customer service. And ethics are your values, your integrity, and your commitment to CSR.
So it's a holistic view of what makes an organization reputable.
Exactly. And the material provides some helpful questions to consider for each of these elements, helping organizations assess and improve their reputation. It also highlights the importance of understanding the general reputation of your industry and how your organization stacks up against the competition.